after a lorry caught fire. On the M6, 2 lanes are out northbound just after the Corby services north of Coventry following an accident, and further up from 10 to 10A towards the M54, a lorry's broken down, so 1 lane is closed. And in Kent, the Hive Road at Dymchurch, that's closed west of Hive at the scene of a 2-vehicle crash. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win big this summer. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight, Gamblegate rumbles on. One cabinet minister even has said that it's time to ban MPs from gambling on politics. Full stop. Is it really? On my panel tonight is the biggest donor to Reform UK. He says that one of the reasons for that is their approach to stopping migration. But let me ask though, will anyone's plan, quite frankly, work when it comes to this issue? Or has that ship already sailed? And do you think we need to have a global wealth tax for the ultra wealthy? If so, tell me, what would that look like? And just when you thought this election campaign, quite frankly, could not get any more bizarre, get this, Doctor Who has basically seemed to suggest that he wishes Kemi Badenoch was dead. Then he realised how bad that sounded and wrote back to say what he actually meant to say was that she should shut up. What on earth is going on? All that and more before 7, but for now, the 6 o'clock headlines.
Michelle, thank you and good evening to you. Well, the driver of a car that crashed into a primary school in London, killing 2 8-year-old girls, will face no criminal charges. Nouria Sajjad and Selina Lau died after the crash at their primary school in Wimbledon last year. It was found the driver had suffered an epileptic seizure behind the wheel, and she's expressed her deepest sorrow and said she has no recollection of what took place. The parents of the girls killed, though, said they remain unconvinced that the investigation has been conducted thoroughly. Julian Assange says it's surreal to be back on Australian soil after his years-long struggle for freedom came to an end. A warning if you're watching on television, the following does contain some flashing imagery. The 52-year-old WikiLeaks founder touched down in Canberra, Australia today, where he was greeted by his father and his wife Stella. She says he'll need time now to rediscover his freedom, while his lawyer described his homecoming as a huge win for free speech. And the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, thanked the UK and the United States for supporting the international effort behind him.
I do want to express my appreciation to the United States and the United Kingdom for their efforts in making this possible. He described it as a surreal and happy moment. He's landing here in our national capital, Canberra. He expressed his thanks to what he described as the diplomatic A-team when I spoke about the role that Kevin and Stephen have been able to play.
Now, Scotland Secretary Alistair Jack insists he hasn't broken any rules after he admitted to placing 3 bets on the date of the UK election. The Cabinet Minister said he had no inside knowledge of when the election would take place, despite previously revealing he had made more than £2,000 from the bet. He later dismissed that claim as a joke. Mr Jack becomes the 7th person to become embroiled in the scandal, with just a week to go before voters head to the polls. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the Conservatives have taken too long to deal with the scandal.
I made very clear that if any of my candidates was being investigated in relation to the Gambling Commission, I'd remove them straight away, which is what I've done. That's in a sharp contrast to Rishi Sunak, who took days and days and days before he took action. There's a wider story here about the choice at the general election next week between carrying on with what we've had for the last 14 years or so. The inaction by Rishi Sunak is just absolutely in keeping with the way that they've governed for 14 years, or turning the page and starting to rebuild the country.
Sir Keir Starmer. Now, Spanish police have released new footage in their search for the missing British teenager Jay Slater. If you're watching on television, check out these aerial shots from a helicopter scouring that mountainous area beneath them, with search teams still working on foot below, having been joined by specialised sniffer dogs. Just yesterday, the Guardia Civil, the local police, saying their efforts in Tenerife aren't being scaled back. The 19-year-old went missing 10 days ago whilst on holiday. Early morning calls to GP practices in an effort to lock in limited appointments could become a thing of the past under plans to bolster the NHS app under Labour. They say they would have a plan to see the app updated to encompass several health professionals, including GPs, physiotherapists and dentists, to make securing an appointment simple and easy. The party says 5 million people tried and failed to get a GP appointment every month last year. And Vice Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence says the Princess Royal is recovering slowly as he left a Bristol hospital after visiting his wife. Princess Anne is understood to have been injured by a horse while she was out walking on her Gatcombe estate on Sunday evening. She suffered some memory loss, we understand. The exact circumstances unclear at this stage, but doctors are saying she will make a full recovery. Just one last story for you about Phil Foden. He's had to leave England's Euro 2024 camp to return home for the birth of his 3rd child. It's hoped the Manchester City midfielder will be back in time for Sunday's last 16 clash in Germany. He started all 3 of England's Group C matches as Gareth Southgate's side advanced by finishing top of the group. We wish him luck whilst he's at home. That's the news. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on the screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that. Polly, I found that last story, or one of the last stories there in the headlines, interesting about Labour's plans when it all comes to modern tech, particularly how we're going to revolutionise the NHS. As you might know, my background is, of course, IT, and one of the basics that we're always taught about, one of those kind of scare stories, was what happened last time. One of the biggest public failings, IT projects. When you're bored, go and look it up. I want someone to actually ask these people, how on earth are you going to actually make sure that you've got the basics right, so we don't have yet another technology disaster? What do you think to it all? Is technology the future for the NHS or not? I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, I've got a new face to the programme. We like those, ladies and gents, don't we? Zia Yusuf, he's the entrepreneur and the biggest donor to Reform UK. Also alongside him, I've got Aaron Bastani, co-founder of Navara Media. Gentlemen, you're very, very welcome. Evening. First time. We do love a new face. You are also very welcome tonight. And you know the drill. real on this programme, don't you? It's not just about us three. It's very much about you guys at home as well. What is on your mind tonight? Get in touch all the usual ways. Email gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website gbnews/yoursay. Talk to me on there, as some of you already are. Or, of course, you can tweet or X me. And also, get this, what a proposition for you, you lucky, lucky people, because you have the opportunity to spend the night with me. Yes, you did indeed hear that right. Live on election night, GB News, we will be over in Essex. Not just me, but my colleague Patrick Christie's as well. We will be hosting an exclusive election night watch party. And if you want to be part of that live audience in Essex, you can apply now. Get your telephones out, scan that QR code on your screen, or go to the website gbnews.com/election party. I'm not joking, by the way. I literally mean spend the night with me, because we are pulling an all-nighter. It's not for the lightweights, ladies and gents, but it will be a moment never to forget. I can promise you that. But look, let's talk about the election campaign, shall we? Because I'm joined live by GB News political editor Christopher Hope. Good evening to you, Christopher. Where are you, and what can you tell us about the goings-on of the day?
I'm in a hot Nottingham, Michelle, where we're waiting shortly for the start of this final head-to-head debate. There's been only one other so far in this campaign, which is the two main party leaders, Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer. And we're here, it's the BBC is showing up live on TV tonight. I'm here with all the build-up from the spin room where I'm standing, and it's really hot here. And then, of course, the reaction afterwards, all on GB News. So do stay tuned for that. It's been quite a busy day on the election trail. The big news at 5 o'clock today has been an MRP poll by Electoral Calculus and Find Out Now. That means that they've polled a lot more people than the usual 1,500 or 2,000 or so. They've polled 19,000 people between June the 14th and June the 24th. It's given the Labour Party a forecast majority of 250 next Friday morning, 450 MPs. The Tories down to 60, and they're in third place behind the Liberal Democrats on 71 MPs. So according to this forecast from Electoral Calculus Find Out Now, the Lib Dems, yes, the Lib Dems become the official opposition, which is extraordinary in itself. Also big news in this poll is the Reform UK party, led by Richard Tice and Nigel Farage. They get 18 MPs. From 0, of course, to 18 MPs. That'll be historic for a challenger party to get that many. Quite surprising. The SNP 24, Greens and Plaid 4, and one independent MP. Guess who it is? Jeremy Corbyn, the former Labour leader, now an independent standing in this election. So this is a poll from Find Out Now, an Electoral Calculus. It's forecasting a historic result next Friday. The bigger landslide majority for Labour since '97, biggest in '97. But it's a busy old time here. And the Reform UK news, I think, is interesting. Elsewhere on the election trail, Reform UK are saying that Nigel Farage can't campaign in Scotland because it's not safe. And a Greenpeace protester has been spotted on the roof of the Tory battle bus.
And what did they do? Did they leave him up there and take him cups of tea, or did they actually yank him off? Didn't sound right, you know what I mean? Did they get him off that bus?
I didn't see. I think he's now taken down. I don't know how he came down, because I wasn't on. I've been interviewing the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, for GB News, and that interview plays out tonight at 7 p.m. So I wasn't with the protester at the time.
Interesting stuff. Christopher Hope, thank you very much. I don't know who these protesters think they are. Did you see them? The one that happened yesterday, absolutely revolting. I don't even want to indulge too much airtime on it. Absolutely disgusting. The one with the lake. I don't even know what goes through people's mind in this day and age. Look, let's just pick up on this MRP poll then. So it is quite fresh off the press. But as we were just saying there, I mean, you are, I need to be very transparent about this, the biggest donor to Reform UK. When you see a poll that says that party is essentially on track to potentially get 18 seats, do you think that is money well spent for you? Do you think what you're doing, it should be more? Are you surprised or what?
Well, firstly, I think the party tell me my donation was the biggest of the campaign so far. So that would just be the first thing I'd say. Look, I did what I did, and I donated money to the Reform Party because I believe Nigel Farage and Richard Tice are the best political leaders to take this country forward, to face down these formidable challenges that we face. And these polls that show reform with 18% of the vote, with 18 seats, are a demonstration that, look, reform, if a vote for reform is clearly a positive vote to take the country forward positively. If you're sitting at home and you want real change in Westminster, you're tired of the status quo, you're tired of either bad policies or people who put forward policies you agree with and then essentially do the total opposite, frankly, the only option, the only vote that isn't a wasted vote, is a vote for reform.
So you feel pleased about that outcome?
Well, look, I think the one thing that
stands out... Is it the level that would you want a better level? Is it surprising to you?
Well, everything's about the momentum. You know, in October 2022, Reform are polling at around 4%. You know, this poll shows them at 18%. We're up against, Reform are up against the Conservative Party, the oldest political party in the world. Reform has been around in the blink of an eye compared to that. And yet, look at the remarkable momentum. And we have 18... One thing that I'm not particularly happy about is that we have 18% of the vote share in this poll, with only 18 seats. Labour, 40% of the vote share, 450 seats, which just shows the formidable challenge that Reform are up against. But the momentum is clearly with the Reform Party. I'm incredibly optimistic about the future.
Well, I think it was the last time that you was on, actually. Your opposite, if you like, on this debate was Peter Hitchens, and he was telling all the viewers, you know, you shouldn't vote for the likes of Reform UK. He's saying that that is essentially a vote for Labour, and the point that Zia makes there in terms of Labour getting 40% of the vote and such a massive number of those seats. Does that kind of mean that the likes of Peter Hitchens' predictions ring true, or what?
Well, if this is accurate, I think Peter's arguments are moot, because the Conservative Party getting 60 seats, losing 22 members of the Cabinet, including, by the way, I tweeted about this before I came on air, I didn't see the fact that Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt are the two of the people that go. Extraordinary. If that was to come to pass, then obviously...
And isn't that going to be the first time a sitting Prime Minister is going to lose his seat like that, Rishi Sunak, obviously?
To the best of my understanding, the Liberals had something strange happen, I think, in the early 20th century, but I don't think it was like this. I think you had a former PM lose there. I think Herbert Asquith lost his seat in the subsequent election, but I think that's correct. And there are so many surprises, by the way, beyond just Reform and the Tories. The Green Party getting 4 seats, Ed Davey as Leader of the Opposition, would be the most crazy election in British history. But quickly on your point about the Conservatives, it's moot because they're in freefall. And if I was a Reform member or activist or leader, I would say there are still those 60 seats. There's 18 of us. We hunt them down in 2030, 2029. And if that does come to pass, I think you've got an even Stevens chance that it's the end of the Conservative Party. Because what is their unique selling point compared to Reform, which have this formidable operation, great social media, Nigel Farage? What's their selling point going to be? They're going to have no leadership. All their top people have just been decapitated. So it's existential for the Tories if that happens.
Well, towards the end of the programme, I'm going to bring a lady into the conversation many of you will be familiar with, Kemi Badenoch, but actually some people would argue, Aaron, well, you ask about the Tories, what about if they had someone like Kemi leading them at the next election, then? That might change their fortunes.
She loses her seat. She loses her seat. Penny Mordaunt loses her seat. Rishi, Jeremy Hunt, Gillian Keegan. I mean, lots of people lose their seats. So, I mean, Kemi Badenoch would be the best of a bad bunch in terms of trying to take things forward if you were a Tory, I suppose. Maybe there's still Suella Braverman. But when you've got 60 MPs, it's going to be tremendously hard. You're going to have very few top people to pick from. There was that problem in '97 for the Conservatives, but they had, what, 156, 160 MPs? Now they're going to have 60.
And then is some of this, maybe just talking in terms of percentage votes versus seats gained, is some of this stuff going to be an argument for proportional representation going forward, do you think?
100%. If you look at the Green and Reform tallies here, quick mathematics, so forgive me if I'm not entirely correct. In terms of vote share, 26% between them. In terms of MPs, 22. So I think it's around 3% of MPs for 26% of the vote. That is ridiculous. And the idea that the Lib Dems, with 5% less than Reform, will be the opposition, I don't think that's really admissible.
There's going to be millions upon millions of people in this country after this election who feel that they are unrepresented in Westminster, and the system is totally unfair on them. I think the pressure is going to be overwhelming quite soon.
But didn't we have that before, though? Wasn't it 2015? Was it your political knowledge, your history knowledge is better than mine? Was it 2015 with UKIP, where they got millions of votes, in just that defection from Douglas Carswell? And people would have thought then that they was disenfranchised, disconnected and unrepresented then. So why didn't it happen then?
Well, at that point, the Conservative Party weren't on the brink of a historic wipeout. You know, I think, to Erin's point, this is a historic moment. We should be under no illusions about what's happening in this country. There is a total repudiation of the Conservative Party by the British electorate, the likes of which we haven't seen before. I think that you should judge a party on their record. They've been in power for 14 years. I think that if you say that you're going to bring migration down to tens of thousands and you do that time after time after time, manifesto after manifesto, and then you do the total opposite, the idea that people won't feel betrayed by that is fanciful, and I think the country needs real change. And I think this poll tells us that we have a real opportunity to reform, excuse the pun, the centre-right of politics in this country.
And I'm sure, isn't it tonight is a deadline or something to get your photo ID if you've not already got that? If you're someone that says, oh, well, I want to vote, but now I need this ID, you can still get that, by the way. I will come on to immigration in a second after the break, because I know it's such a hot topic for many of you at home as well. But in terms of this Gamblegate, I mean, there was a suggestion today from Mel Stride that actually you could even explore banning MPs from gambling politically altogether. I mean, is that really the level that we've come to?
I think you probably have to have a very clear red line. That might be unfair, in a way. I personally don't see a problem with somebody betting on themselves winning. I think what happened with Kevin Craig and a GB News favourite...
I know, I couldn't believe... I'm telling you now, I could not believe it. When I heard that breaking news, it pricked my ears up. Well, then I saw that name, I was like, goodness gracious
He voted on himself losing. I think that's very, very bad, because you're then creating incentives to not actually try your best as a candidate. But I think you need a very clear red line. I think if you're standing for public office as a councillor, as an MP, whatever, as a mayoral candidate, I think you should be prohibited from placing any kind of bets on a political nomination or race.
Do you agree with that?
I think it is a sign of the times and utterly ridiculous that we even have to be having this conversation. Again, I think most people at home would understand that if you're running for office and you start placing bets on the outcome of an election, i.e. something you can directly influence, that is just wrong. Yes, we probably should have a law against it. That would be my personal view. But again, I think it's an absolute indictment.
A law against what?
Well, a law against, for example, if you're a candidate or if you're a politician, betting on outcomes that you have some influence over.
So just political. You wouldn't start saying people can't put a fiver on the Grand National or anything like that?
No, I think, look, my experience of this country, having been born and raised here, is that British people on the whole are pretty wise, pretty smart people, and we should largely leave them alone unless absolutely necessary. I don't think we should be taking away all pleasures from MPs, no matter how people feel. But again, it just comes back to where are we with ethics in the political system inside Westminster at the moment? If you just zoom out for a minute, if this was something in a BBC TV show, you know, a drama, I think the script would get rejected because it's so absurd that you'd say there's absolutely no way. You know, if this was in the thick of it, you'd say this would really be pushing it.
And the
fact that we're now talking about 15 people and that could also go up. Again, I think that the country needs change. This is a symptom of really the corrupt culture that we have in Westminster now.
Do you agree with that? I can feel perhaps many of you will be nodding your head. And if you do agree with that, is it enough to stop you going out and voting then? Are you still going to participate in the next general election or not? Lots coming your way after the break. Not least, immigration is a hot topic. Do you think it's going to be as simple as us smashing the gangs and creating returns deals or not? I'll see you in 2.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Almost half of those seeking to have an affair are happier with their job than with their primary relationship. But what exactly does a cheater do for a living?
Well, medical assistants and nurses, surprisingly, top the lists of professions for female cheaters, and it's jobs in IT or tech for male cheaters, which I think is less of a surprise.
No.
This is all according to a survey by the dating site Ashley Madison.
OK, so why do people cheat? To answer this, we're joined now by broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy.
Morning, Lucy.
So, is it OK of me to say naughty nurses in this day and age? Am I going to get cancelled for that?
You're out.
Yeah, I'm out.
Been cancelled.
See ya.
There's the door.
There we
But
go.
yes,
Yes, you're talking about the caring professions, and I think it's very appropriate.
I'm surprised by that.
Women, well, because they're very nurturing, very loving, very giving, whereas the males who are in tech and IT, very strategic.
Is there a link between high-pressure jobs, maybe nurses infamously, you know, they're working long hours, underpaid, stressed out? Is there a link between jobs of that nature and cheating, maybe as a relief?
Absolutely. Is it just about sex, or is it about emotional connection? Is it about emotional validation? And increasingly, people are discovering that their primary relationship is just not a place where they feel safe.
This survey found that personality didn't actually come into it that much. It was about half and half if you're an introvert or an extrovert that you'd be likely to have an affair.
I think that's right. And I think that just speaks to the fact that all people want to have a good emotional connection. So it doesn't matter whether you're really social or whether you're someone who has to recharge your batteries in private time, that actually we only ever want three things in life. We want to feel safe, we want to feel loved, but we also want to feel heard. And in increasingly a number of marriages and long-term relationships, we get into grooves, we get into ruts, and we stop hearing our partner, we stop listening to them, and they stop listening to us.
The People's Channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m, followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain, followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello everyone, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me my panel, Zia Yousaf, who's the entrepreneur and Reform UK donor, and Aaron Bastani, the co-founder of Novara Media. Someone here says, I don't mind politicians betting on politics as long as they don't have prior knowledge of the result. That's kind of missing the point though, isn't it? Because if you're running for office and you know that you could do a terrible job, let's just say, or not even really bother campaigning, you might be able to affect that outcome, do you not think? Bernard says, Michelle, I think that people will be surprised on election day for the support for reform. He says their popularity has been dumbed down by pollsters and the mainstream media, he says. Keep your thoughts coming in, but I've got to say a huge issue dominating lots of the conversation in this election is migration. Labour, they've been accused of having what I would call, well, I directly quote actually, a broken moral compass. This is after Jonathan Ashworth was talking, I would say, a little bit of nonsense, actually, when it comes to Labour's immigration policy. Let's take a listen.
Most asylum seekers, according to official figures, come from Afghanistan and Iran. You're not suggesting to voters that you'll get a returns agreement with the Taliban and with the Iranian regime.
But we're talking about people like that. We've got people coming from Albania, from India, from Bangladesh.
But you just literally ignored the two countries where most asylum seekers come from. Yeah, you're not going to get a returns agreement.
Big proportion is India, Bangladesh, Albania. We need to deal with those
and you're still
countries.
ignoring Afghanistan and Iran. Are you saying you're going to get returns agreements with those two countries?
Well, you look at each one on its merits, obviously.
I mean, come on now. Absolutely ridiculous. You said that one of the reasons you have decided to donate to Reform is their stance on things like immigration. When you hear the Labour Party, they've got this plan and it's all about smashing gangs, creating return agreements and all the rest. And I would say that Jonathan just didn't answer the question because he couldn't, because he must know when he looks in the mirror that standing there and talking about, yeah, I'm going to do this really awesome deal with the Taliban, he must know that that is absurd and probably not going to happen. Do you honestly think that any party can stop these boat crossings now?
Well, yeah, as somebody who's built a business, I believe that most of these problems that I see in the political arena are actually problems of bold leadership and a lack of courage from political leaders. You know, we have an amazing Royal Navy, who carry out humanitarian operations all over the world. We are paying £500 million to France. in exchange for them stopping these boats. They're completely stopping. They're obviously not doing that. My view is that what reforms policy, I think reforms policy it makes a lot of sense. Essentially, it says we will use our navy to take the illegal migrants who are coming here in boats back to France, which clearly is a safe country, and we will do that in a safe way for their own safety. And I think that the fact that we haven't done that, and we've done all sorts of other things other than do that, is the fundamental problem here.
I know, but Ben Habib, I mean, is he, I don't know his role now in Reform, I don't know if he's the deputy leader or whatever.
Deputy leader, yeah.
Yeah, so he got into hot water because when he was questioned on this policy before, quite recently actually, the host was putting to him, would you just let people drown in the Channel? And he got a lot of criticism because that was what the suggestion was about Reform's policy. Is that the policy?
I would not have donated money to Reform if that was their policy. That is not their policy. The policy would be to, in a safe manner, which our Navy is more than capable of doing, and has demonstrated that time and time again, taking them back to France. Essentially, we need a deterrent, right?
Why is France going to let you do that?
Well, the reality is we have to... So firstly, the legal advice that the Reform Party has received from well-qualified lawyers is that international treaties allow us to do that. Might we then have a pretty challenging conversation with France about that? Probably. What else are we going to have a challenging conversation with France about other than maintaining our sovereignty and the integrity of our border?
Aaron?
On the case of Iran, I think we should end sanctions on the Iranian government, and I think we should try and normalise relations as best as possible. Iran, I'm half Iranian, is a fabulous country, fabulous people, highly educated people, amazing natural resources. It should be an extraordinary success story. Now, part of its failure, and the fact it's not, is down to the regime, of course. Part of it is about the sanctions. And I find it bizarre, I say this almost every week I come on, that we have sanctions designed to destroy the Iranian economy. That's the point of those sanctions, and then we're upset when people leave the country. So I think in the case of Iranians, the first thing you should do is at least try to create an element of economic normality with that country. I understand that's complex, but it's a big part of that. And with Afghanistan and the Taliban, I obviously don't think we should be returning people there, no. I do think we should have a diplomatic presence there, though, and I think we should be trying, again, to...
So hang on, let me
work towards that place becoming a more normal country. It's a supremely dysfunctional, abnormal country right now, but one day it might not be.
You said that you don't think that we should be engaging with returns to Afghanistan. Why not?
Well, I think it's a supremely unsafe place for many people, particularly women, particularly minorities. Hazara, for instance, there is ethnic cleansing there, very well documented. I think, you would struggle to find many countries, actually, worse than Afghanistan with regards to...
So are you saying that we should accept the majority population of Afghanistan, then?
Not necessarily. Look, you've got a suite of options there. You might say you do a deal with neighbouring countries. For instance, Persian-speaking Afghans can integrate very well into Iranian society. You might choose to do that. Or in Pakistan, right? You can create economic incentives for that. Europe as a whole might wish to do that. I'm not suggesting it's one or the other. What I am saying is that Afghanistan, for many people, is a very unsafe country. I'm personally in touch with an Afghan woman presently living in Pakistan. She's an academic. She's a feminist. I don't think Afghanistan's a very safe place for her. That's what she says to me. She doesn't want to live in Afghanistan. She was in Pakistan. She was happy in Pakistan. Pakistan's presently in the process of getting rid of Afghan migrants in that country. So I don't think it's an either-or. I think you can create...
But we need to be realistic, though, don't we? Because most people that are getting on these boats, they're not the kind of females that you're describing, who, by the way, I'm not disputing what you're saying. I personally would not like to be a woman in Afghanistan. Thank you very much. But that's not who's getting on these boats, primarily. It's young men that think Afghanistan's so awful that they're willing to leave all their family there.
Well, that's for the Home Office to adjudicate. But what I would say is there are men who are Hazara, there may be men who are homosexual, there may be men who... aren't Muslim, they've maybe converted, and you might say, well, that's not many people. I mean, we can, again, have that conversation. But there will be men who come to this country who are genuine asylum seekers, many men, who are genuine asylum seekers, and who genuinely should not be sent back to Afghanistan. Now, we have a range of options. You mentioned France, maybe Iran, maybe Pakistan. But I think sending people back who say, my life is in danger if I go back, and they have good reason to demonstrate that, I think it's very dangerous to send them back to somewhere like Kabul.
But you will say, for example, and you just did say, that if someone is, for example, homosexual, then they are at risk because of the Taliban. I don't dispute that, by the way. But then you open the door then to all kinds of people just saying, you know what, I'm gay and I can't go back. What's the Home Office going to do? They're not going to follow them to their bedrooms to check what's going on, are they? So therefore, that then becomes a massively hugely abused excuse.
Well, like
Is it
I say,
not?
you've got a suite of options, and I think Afghanistan is probably the country where this is somewhere I would absolutely draw that red line. So in the case of, for instance, Iran, I think you can have more ambiguity there. But with regards to the Taliban, look, we don't even have a diplomatic presence in the country right now. And by the way, very quickly, the Labour right fascinate me because 18 months ago you had Labour MPs saying that we shouldn't be leaving the country, we should still have a military presence there, it's still so evil, we shouldn't be going, even if the Americans are pulling out, we shouldn't pull out. So they were willing for UK service personnel to die in a pointless war in Afghanistan, but now they're saying it's so safe, maybe we can send people back there. Which one is it? Personally, I think Afghanistan is a very unsafe, not particularly nice or pleasant country for many people.
May I just say,
You may,
Michelle, so look, I respect your opinions, Aaron, and you're clearly very educated on those parts of the world. But look, the reality is this is a British general election. You know, we should be talking about what's best for British people of all religions and races. Let's also be really clear. Those of us who do care about the humanitarian plight of the people crossing the Channel, over 200 of them have died, have perished making that journey, and they are being smuggled by illegal gangs. The thing we have to focus on is stopping those boats from coming. And I think a lot of this debate, we conflate two things. The first thing we need to do is secure our border. If you do not secure your border and these boats just keep coming, as they have for year after year after year in ever greater numbers, then your actual immigration policy is actually irrelevant. The second, once we have done that, then we can have an asylum system and then we can decide, look, there's 90 million people in the world, according to the UN, who are permanently displaced from their homes. As much as we'd love to be able to take all of them, obviously we can't do it. So we have to have a coherent policy of legal migration, which has also been far too high. So that's why I think reforms policy makes so much sense, because I understand all of those concerns about returning people to those countries, taking them to France. France is a safe country, that is quite clear, and that's why reforms policy makes sense. We have to secure our borders as a first step.
Zia, many people will push back against reforms policies, and many people will say that they are racist, for example. Now, you yourself, you are from an immigrant family. When people are saying to you that essentially the policies that you're supporting are racist, how do you respond to that?
Well, look, my response is I'm Muslim. I obviously don't have white skin, so I actually know what Islamophobia looks like. I know what racism actually looks like. I know Nigel personally. I've also started a successful business and sold it. So I've become a reasonably good judge of character. It's my sincere opinion that Nigel Farage is somebody who cares deeply about the future of the country and wants what's best for British people of all religions and races. And you can see that, by the way, if you actually look at reform support. And I've had a huge number of people reach out to me since the announcement of my donation came out. People of all races and all religions saying we agree with reforms policies. And so, look, too often when we try to talk about these really big challenges that we face as a country, the political discourse descends into name-calling. So there's absolutely no way, and I can, again, as someone who's built a business, if you're unable to even look the problem in the eye, if you're unable to even have difficult conversations, you stand no chance of successfully solving the problem.
And border protection and enforcement of your borders is government 101. I am going to ask both of you this. Why do you think that the government is just refusing to do that?
A lack of courage.
What do you think it is?
There's a part of me that thinks that actually the Conservatives haven't tried to address this problem because for a long time, until Nigel Farage was back on the pitch, migration being a high salience issue 2-3 years ago, they felt played well for them politically. And I think actually they've created the conditions for a catastrophe for their own party.
I was listening to Alistair Campbell. He was speaking, he was on this channel actually earlier on today, promoting his book or something, and he was speaking out today. Let's take a listen.
I think your star here, Mr Farage, has not been subject to any real scrutiny of policy. I don't think he'd sustain a real press conference on policy because he comes up with numbers that don't add up. He comes up with promises.
He admits that.
Yeah, but that's what's wrong with our politics.
Yeah, but
you can't stand for election and say, "I'm saying these things, but I know they don't add up."
Well, you know what? I'm going to ask his thoughts on that comment after the break. You tell me yours. In the meantime, I'll see you in 2.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following another hot day for many, it's warm overnight, but cooler air is on the way and windier weather. This unseasonably deep low pressure arriving for Thursday and Friday, that's going to bring some unseasonable strong winds to Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Now, it's not been hot everywhere during Wednesday, but for much of central and southeastern England, it has been another very warm or hot one, and it's going to stay warm in these areas overnight despite the clear spells. 17 Celsius. Further west and north, we've got showery rain moving in, cloud and an increased breeze. So by dawn, much more unsettled across parts of Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, the winds picking up strength through the morning, bands of rain moving into the west coast. We've also got some heavy showers pushing through the Northern Isles, perhaps the odd rumble of thunder. Brighter skies for much of the rest of Scotland, feeling cooler here. And for much of northern and western England, Wales, cloudier conditions to begin things, although the rain on the weather front that is making the change tending to peter out, and really it's just a band of cloud and a few spots of rain as it pushes into the Midlands, and then by the afternoon East Anglia in the southeast. As that rain arrives and as the cloud thickens, the wind changes direction, temperatures aren't going to reach the highs that we saw in the last couple of days. We're looking at closer to 25, 26 Celsius in the east and southeast. But sunshine returns by the end of the day across much of England and Wales. Blustery showers in the west and the north. And as I say, unseasonably windy through Thursday, especially in the far north and northwest. And into Friday, we've still got some heavy showers moving through and some strong winds that could impact any outdoor events that are taking place. And so watch out for that. Into the weekend, mixed conditions, some cloud, a bit of rain here and there, but also some sunshine, temperatures back to average.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Right on the Warwickshire-Staffordshire border, the M42 remains closed southbound, junction 10 to 9, that's Tamworth to Coleshill. A lorry was on fire, causing long queues on the approach. And on the M6, a couple of problems. First of all, northbound, just after the Corley services, of course, north of Coventry. 2 lanes are closed on that 4-lane stretch where a lorry collided with 2 cars, causing queues back to junction 2 and along the Coventry bypass as you divert. Further up on the M6, a lane shut northbound heading away from Birmingham, 10 to 10A towards the M54. Recovery works underway after a lorry broke down. South East London, the Rotherhithe Tunnel stays closed for emergency repairs, and not far from there, the Blackwall Tunnel is shut southbound where a car's broken down inside the tunnel. On the Kent stretch of the M25, the outside lanes blocked anti-clockwise to the Darren Finch change following a breakdown causing queues towards the tunnels. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock. Zia Youssef, the entrepreneur and Reform UK donor, alongside me, as is Aaron Bastani, the co-founder of Navarro Media. Let me just play you a clip I showed you just before the break. Look.
I think your star here, Mr Farage, has not been subject to any real scrutiny of policy. I don't think he'd sustain a real press conference on policy because he comes up with numbers that don't add up. He comes up with promises.
He admits that.
Yeah, but that's what's wrong with our politics.
Yeah, but
you can't stand for election and say, "I'm saying these things, but I know they don't add up."
What's your response to that, Zia?
Well, look, my response is the notion that Nigel Farage has not been subjected to scrutiny in this election is laughable. He's had significant press coverage. He's obviously an amazing campaigner. If you actually go, and I'd really recommend people at home to do so with an open mind, go and look at Reform's contract with the people. These are common sense policies that resonate with voters in this country. And on the most important issues that we are talking about now, the issues which, frankly, if we do not get them in order, may end up being unassailable challenges over the next decades. They're incredibly urgent. Reform's policies actually make more sense than any of the other parties.
Do you think their policies specifically get enough scrutiny?
Well, in terms of the manifesto, I don't know, or the contract. In terms of Nigel Farage, I sort of see where Alistair Campbell's coming from, and it infuriates me because the terrain where Nigel Farage is most adept is migration, patriotism, and for some reason, Liberal journalists only grill him on the stuff where he's most in tune with the country. No, ask Nigel why, when there was the budget, the kamikaze budget, ask him why it was the best budget this country had seen since the 1980s. Ask him why. Very rarely that you see that. So there are some things, by the way, in the Reform Manifesto I agree with. Scrapping student loan interest, for instance. I would love to see more of that. But strangely, this country's journalists are obsessed with talking to Nigel Farage about the things where he's very, very popular.
Why?
Well, because they disagree with him, right? Because they disagree with him on migration, they are obsessed with talking about it, and yet actually it's almost like it's like imagine if Jeremy Corbyn was on TV all the time, and the only thing journalists would talk to him about is food banks. Everybody watching will agree with Jeremy Corbyn on food banks. Talk to him about his Achilles heel. And I think, for me, what I've noticed actually in this campaign, it's been very short, is that Farage has made two commitments which aren't in the manifesto. One is scrapping the two-child benefit cap. Another was scrapping tuition fees for people studying STEM subjects. Again, by the way, both very, very popular. He is very much in tune with the centre of this country, but that's not in the contract/manifesto. So I would have a question for Nigel. Who writes the policy in this party? And who's doing the numbers? Because you've made two big policies up on the fly there. And that doesn't matter now, but it does matter when you have 18 MPs.
Is he making policies up on the fly?
Well, look, I think that statement there that it doesn't matter now, it will matter should this comes to pass, and we have Reform has 18 MPs, right? And that's pretty much exactly what Nigel Farage has been saying. I mean, look at the infrastructure that Reform has. It's got some. It obviously has nowhere near the number of, for example, employees that, for example, the Labour and Conservative Party have. Nevertheless, people like Richard Tice, who's a very successful entrepreneur, other people that I'm aware of have inputted into the policy, into the contract with the people, are very, very successful business people. They have had to make decisions in the real world. They've had to think about second and third order effects, and they've had to balance budgets, because if they didn't, their business would fail. That is something that very few people who make policy, I can tell you in Westminster, can say. So I have huge amounts of confidence that actually not only would Reform deliver on those policies that are popular, including, for example, cutting income tax, so essentially eliminating income tax for people who earn below £20,000 a year, eliminating income tax for people like...
Yeah, but people are saying that those promises don't stack up. Because who wouldn't want a threshold of 20 grand? But whether or not we can afford it is different.
The equation. I mean, if you look at Kwasi Kwarteng's budget, I mean, you can have the discussion about timing and things, but there are a lot of tax cuts in there which might appeal to a lot of the country.
Yeah, but
essentially there were no difficult decisions being made on spending. And what I can see in the Reform parties, there's real appetite and ability to actually ensure that all British taxpayers get a lot more value for what they're spending. I mean, if you look at the NHS, we spend more money on it as a country now than we ever have before, with worst ever outcomes. Waiting lists are at all-time highs, avoidable mortality rating, look them up online. We are way, way at the bottom compared to other developed countries. We need better value for the money that we're spending, and that, again, is a big reason why I support the Reform Party.
So do you think that the sums do add up?
I don't think the sums add up for any party. I've read all the manifestos, I'll be quite frank. Maybe the Lib Dems, because they're not talking about very much. Labour's certainly don't add up. The IFS said this, by the way. The Conservative parties don't add up. So, no, they don't. The question is, what are you going to do? And look, let's be real, Reform aren't going to be the party of government. Labour are. And there could be, I think, a few surprises on capital gains tax, maybe council tax reform.
Well, yeah, because I think they were saying about a conspiracy of silence between both Labour and Tory about what exactly they are indeed planning to do when it comes to tax. You tell me, there's a whole plethora of manifestos, contracts out there. Do you think anyone's sums add up, actually, in this election? And do you care? Are you sitting there going, you know what, all of these beans need to be counted correctly and accurately, or do you actually care more that someone shares your vision, your sentiment, and wants the country to perhaps look, I don't know, in a way that you would like it to look as well, whether that's lower taxes, lower immigration, higher immigration, whatever it is that you want. Talk to me. Also, let me ask you about wealth tax. Do you think the wealthy should be taxed more? Something tells me that these two will disagree. What says you?
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recent polling suggests dentistry has become the hardest NHS service for patients to access, within NHS treatments still 15% lower than pre-pandemic levels. So a YouGov survey reveals that more than 70% of Brits describe seeing the dentist as difficult, compared with 64% for GPs and 42% for A&E services. One British man, get this, he even took to flying 10,000 miles for dental care, saying the extra time and money spent was far less hassle than trying to get an appointment on the NHS. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. And a shocking 1/5 of UK adults have also admitted to trying DIY dentistry, including the old trick of tying string around a wobbly tooth and slamming it in the door so it comes out. So should people be more careful when taking their teeth into their own hands.
That is one of the problems. Obviously, population growth makes it much more difficult for people to access NHS services, but they need to then catch up on the other side with dental services and increase the amount of dentists and access to dentistry, and especially NHS dentistry, obviously.
What's the cut-off age for free dentistry on the NHS?
So it is 18 years old, but there are exemptions around maternity, pregnancy. There's some free care around pregnancy.
We saw some data a few weeks back about the number one cause for child admission into A&E is tooth decay. I mean, that was shocking when I read it.
It's really bad, and what happens is people, kids with multiple decayed teeth, they basically have to be put under general anaesthetic, and then all those rotted teeth have to be extracted under general anaesthetic. Like, if those baby teeth start going crooked, then the adult teeth start going crooked as well. So it is important to look after the baby teeth. It's really important. I think they should make it more central to their policies, definitely.
The People's Channel.
Congratulations to the GB News winners at this year's Trick Awards.
And the winner of Interview of the Year is... Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tominey.
And the winner is GB News Breakfast. And the winner is Nigel Farage.
And thank you to you, our GB News viewers and listeners, for making us the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex, and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock. Zia Youssef, the entrepreneur and Reform UK donor, is alongside me, as is Aaron Bastani, the co-founder of Novara Media. Let me ask you this. I just want to cut straight to the chase here. Do you think that we should have a wealth tax on the ultra-rich or not? Zia?
I'm in favour of practical policies, and when it comes to tax, I think we should. It's doubly important for something to be practical. Billionaires have large teams of accountants. They're the most mobile people in the world. The evidence from the OECD suggests that countries that have implemented wealth tax haven't generally raised that much money because you have changes in behaviour. So unless there was total 100% global coordination of every country in the world that a billionaire would want to move to, which I would say has a probability of precisely zero, it would be pointless.
Aaron?
I'd increase capital gains tax. I'd just edge it up slightly. I mean, there are some forms of wealth which aren't liquid, you can't move them, i.e. big houses. Maybe that would work, but generally speaking, I think that's right. The Greens are going big on a wealth tax. My personal view is I think a capital gains tax increase. I know we have a bit of a tension there.
What would you do with it?
Well, I think in an ideal world you'd equalise tax on wealth and on assets. But what that probably means in reality is you'd reduce income tax and you'd increase CGT. Actually, I think lots of people would agree with that.
Do you agree with that?
I honestly just think these are discussions. The amount of money that such a move would make, even if I would say it would be a good policy, is so small compared to the big challenges that this country actually has. And I think we really should be talking about, as I said, the problems where if we don't get these things right over the next 5 to 10 years, the country will go to a very, very bad place.
I do find this whole, what I would describe as politics of envy. So much of that goes on in this election campaign. Don't even get me started on the Labour plans when it comes to the VAT on private schools. You don't want to send me over the edge when I'm almost time to get off the screens, ladies and gents. Anyway, look, Doctor Who, but you've got to bear with me on this. It's a strange story. Doctor Who, David Tennant, he basically, if you ask me anyway, suggested that Kemi Badenoch should essentially die. He then realised what he said and rode back on it. Watch.
That acknowledging that everyone has the right to be who they want to be and live their life how they want to live it, as long as they're not hurting anyone else, should merit any kind of special award or special mention, because it's common sense, isn't it? We shouldn't live in a world where that is worth remarking on. However, until we wake up and Kemi Badenoch doesn't exist anymore, I don't wish ill of her, I just wish her to shut up.
don't know if your ears work differently to mine, but when I hear someone saying, you know, I wish that I could wake up and so doesn't exist anymore, well, the only way that anyone could not exist anymore is to have died, isn't it? Am I missing something? The fact that people cheer that, I think it's absolutely disgraceful. What do you think, Aaron Bastani?
I think it's just a turn of phrase. I think you're being a bit unfair on him. Look, I believe in free speech. And that means, people can say things that you disagree with. I mean, look, I personally wouldn't wish ill of anybody. I try to be a good Christian in that regard, Michelle.
Do you? What do you think to those comments? Is it all just been a storm in a teacup?
I think somebody with the profile and influence of David Tennant calling for a senior politician or any politician in this country to disappear, let alone shut up, is appalling. And I think he should apologise. I'd also actually say, yes, people should be able to say what they think, but they should be able to say what they think without being told to shut up. You know, we have to be able to talk about problems. Mr. Tennant is perfectly entitled to have completely opposite views politically to Ms. Badenoch, but I think this kind of discourse, particularly from somebody who has his fame, is not on. I think he should apologise.
And let's not forget, everyone, what is the crime apparently that Kemi Badenoch has committed that means that she should shut up and go away? If you ask me, it's essentially that she just thinks that biological reality actually matters and that women and girls should be entitled to safe, single-sex spaces. I mean, how on earth that has even become vaguely controversial is a reflection of how much of a clown world we seem to be existing in. Anyway, look, Rishi Sunak's spoken out. He says it's a freedom of speech is the most powerful feature of our democracy. If you're calling for women to shut up and wishing that they didn't exist, you are the problem. Kemi Badenoch as well. She responded on Twitter or X, whatever we call it these days. She says, "I will not shut up and I will not be silenced by men who prioritise applause from Stonewall over the safety of women and children." What do you actually think to this whole situation? Do you think it's been overhyped? Do you think there's something in this? One of the concerns, and people are so divided on this, because some people will say this whole trans conversation, it's a really small, minor issue. Other people will say, actually, this whole notion about women and children having safe spaces and biological reality is really, really important to you. It will divide people, I'm sure, through to the general election and beyond. Look, that's all I've got time for tonight. I've had a few people get in touch and say, you should be the Prime Minister. You've had that before in this programme as well. And I think I've even had it too. There you go. We could all be in your fantasy Prime Minister list, perhaps. You could choose any. You can have any of your pick. We don't mind. Anyway, look, thank you very much to both of you tonight for your company. Pleasure. Thank you at home. Do not go anywhere, though. Camilla Tominey, the award winner, is up next. I'll see you tomorrow night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following another hot day for many, it's warm overnight, but cooler air is on the way and windier weather. This unseasonably deep low pressure arriving for Thursday and Friday, that's going to bring some unseasonable strong winds to Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Now, it's not been hot everywhere during Wednesday, but for much of central and southeastern England, it has been another very warm or hot one, and it's going to stay warm in these areas overnight despite the clear spells, 17 Celsius. Further west and north, we've got showery rain moving in, cloud and an increased breeze. So by dawn, much more unsettled across parts of Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, the winds picking up strength through the morning, bands of rain moving into the west coast. We've also got some heavy showers pushing through the Northern Isles, perhaps the odd rumble of thunder. Brighter skies for much of the rest of Scotland, feeling cooler here. And for much of northern and western England, Wales, cloudier conditions to begin things, although the rain on the weather front that is making the change tending to peter out, and really it's just a band of cloud and a few spots of rain as it pushes into the Midlands, and then by the afternoon East Anglia in the southeast. As that rain arrives and as the cloud thickens, the wind changes direction, temperatures aren't going to reach the highs that we saw in the last couple of days. We're looking at closer to 25, 26 Celsius in the east and southeast. But sunshine returns by the end of the day across much of England and Wales. Blustery showers in the west and the north. And as I say, unseasonably windy through Thursday, especially in the far north and northwest, and into Friday we've still got some heavy showers moving through and some strong winds that could impact any outdoor events that are taking place, and so watch out for that. Into the weekend, mixed conditions, some cloud, a bit of rain here and there, but also some sunshine, temperatures back to average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. The M42 remains closed southbound. This is right on the Staffordshire-Warwickshire border, junction 10 to 9 between Tamworth and Coleshill after a lorry was on fire. And the M6 is down to 2 lanes northbound just after the Corley services north of Coventry after a lorry collided with 2 cars. Long queues back to junction 2 and along the A46 Coventry bypass as you've been diverting. The M6 further up really slow as well, 10 to 10A towards the M54 after a lorry broke down. Queues back towards Birmingham towards Spaghetti Junction. And on the Surrey stretch of the M25, the inside lanes closed clockwise 8 to 9 just before Leatherhead. An accident is being recovered. In South East London, the Rotherhithe Tunnel is closed for emergency repairs, and in Hampshire the A27 is blocked each way off the A3M at Havant following a 2-car collision. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win big this summer. First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance